The most intensive and the most challenging, technically challenging section of this piece is, of course, its coda, its ending. But actually, if we would coordinate our movements wisely, it won't be as difficult as it might seem. So you play that chord with the stable fingers, using rather an four-arm movement. So fingers are stable, but you don't really press the fingers down, but rather just hold them in that position. Transfer the weight immediately toward the thumb. Don't stay attached to that chord. And of course, using the musical rest in order to release the hand immediately. Same for this repetitive chord. We go slightly higher with the wrist, using that musical rest, and fall down on the stable fingers, like that, using a ricochet movement, and then again toward the thumb. So throwing the hand and releasing it in the musical rest. So basically that's it. And if you just master that movement, this part would seem a piece of cake for you. In the left hand, it's very important to turn the wrist approaching the bass, so you have the stability in the thumb. Your leaning point is in the thumb, in that chord, and then you just turn the hand and stand on the fifth finger. So that stability in the fifth finger and turning the wrist is pretty important. It's very important because if you would move the whole hand, you see how clumsy it feels, how unnatural it seems. But if I would just turn the hand, it suddenly doesn't seem that wide. Then here also releasing the fingers immediately. Releasing the fingers immediately when they are done, and shifting the weight of the hand toward the first finger immediately, and then opening the hand palm slightly in order to approach the chord. Releasing the hand after C in order to hit the last chord. So you have to release between such things in order to play that efficiently. The second time we don't have forzando actually in the bar number 216. So first time when you play that, when you approach the bar number 212, you have that forzando, but the second time, and that there is a reason why second time we don't have that forzando in 216, because then we have a very expressive syncopated rhythm on the second beat. That's why avoiding any accent on the first beat, but using a lot of support and a lot of flexibility in the wrist as well, in order to cushion the shock, in order to avoid a straightforward sound on the second beat. And then left, right, left, using rotation for all these wide structures. And of course, I would provide as much warmth, as much intensity for that voice. Because that's a very painful, very expressive part of this coda. We contrapose those very short, very sharp and harsh accents and very expressive, very warm. Then there's a very similar story in the bar number 224. When we approach that bar, there is no accent, so I would play actually these bars lighter and less pedal, playing all the previous two bars lighter and avoiding the accent on the first beat. Playing with that middle voice, playing with that lower voice, for example, we can slightly exaggerate its expressiveness in the bar number 226. And then in 228, we start a new wave of development. So I would play those biting basses shorter and slightly lighter in order to have enough room for crescendo. So building that line all the way to the top, that's why I would start slightly softer. And in the bars number 225 and similar 227, that bass is really a killer. I really missed it a lot, and I find just one solution that really works. First of all, of course, turning the wrist, but then to glance on it right before I hit it. So while playing that with the right hand, that's pretty comfortable. I don't have to watch it because that's all very close. So while playing that, I just glance on that note very quickly, and that makes the trick. Here on top, also using rotation in order to play those chords. So you have just stable fingers, spread fingers, but then you just rotate the hand. The first time, of course, we have to accent that voice in the thumb, but the second time when we have D flat, we have to voice those intervals. And here we can take some time. So these chords, I would make them more turbulent. That's why we really have to accent each chord, each G minor chord, playing D lighter. And that's very convenient actually, because in the right hand you just go up and then you just slant on the stable fingers using gravity. And then even more turbulent, so that's really a centrifuge. Being in the middle of the storm. But nevertheless, it's very important to use gravity for the first accented octave and play softer the second and shorter, and I would change the pedal a lot. Now another problem with this piece, why it falls apart very often, unfortunately, is that the last page is being played either without tempo or in a very slow tempo. So what I would try to do here is to hold that tension to the very end of the piece, and for that, of course, it helps to stay in tempo and feel that rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, bum, 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 ding. So all this is in one tempo. Bum, 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 bum. For these chords, of course, we have to voice them, but nevertheless, we can do that using gravity. So just shifting the weight of the hand toward the E, and that a ricochet. So you release the hand after the first chord, and then playing two of them within one movement, like that. Here on top of this passage, of course, we have to provide a lot of intensity, and for that we can take more time on it. We can take more time on top of it and shake the hand for each note like that in order to achieve a stronger sound. And of course, that breaking chord in the bar number 246, make sure to transfer the weight really quickly, so don't hold any notes. Just go all the way to the thumb. We practically don't do any diminuendo in the left hand. So both these sounds, N, G and F sharp, are very strong. But in the right hand, in order not to kill ourselves, and in order to make this passage more exciting, we have to start it, we have to reach it on fortissimo, and then play all that middle section just lighter and closer. making a crescendo only at the very end of it. So very bright upper part, much less in the middle. And a huge crescendo to the last G. And then we have to count. We still have to stay in tempo, because unfortunately, since that point, after reaching that G, everything becomes so slow and formless quite often.
Let's finish this.
Guess not.
So 1, 2. That's a ritenuto, but it doesn't mean that these chords should exist without any tempo and that they should be just somehow slow. No, they are tense, but they are still fit. And of course, I would start that passage without any accent. So you accent G, and then just start as softly as possible and with a lot of pedal. And again, crescendo only at the very end of the passage. And of course, standing on the fingers would help a lot to gain stability and to play that passage with a real crescendo at the end. And then a very abrupt ending. It's very important to feel the tension of that dotted rhythm, otherwise it will fall apart. So, and that syncope should be really clear. So you play 2, 1, 2. Don't wait too long before hitting that third beat, because it should be clear that this is a syncope. 3, 1. And at the very end of that passage, I do a very strange thing. I play that standard fingering for a G minor scale, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. But at the very end, I play 1, 2, 1, because I want that last sound to be really strong. So I move my hand just inside the keyboard, like that. That makes sure that I don't miss, and that makes sure that the last sound is really strong. And then the very last passage that unfortunately very often sounds like a very old rusty car that can't just, start immediately. So you have to kind of push it manually in order to help its engine to start finally, like. So it's like a very old train that, starts to move like clumsily and very slowly. So I don't really like that. I actually hate that when it's played like that. That's why I try to start this passage with a lot of energy. And then make ritenuto slightly later, not at the very beginning of it, but somewhere after the second note at least. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And what I also would actually do is to make some diminuendo toward the G. So we start really loud. And then slightly less for that G, and then very gradual and absolutely devastating crescendo to the last G, and then of course still counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So it should still be in tempo, it should not fall apart. So all this ending, all these last 6 bars, they should be in line, they should be like one flow. Otherwise, the piece might break apart just at the very end. So I hope that you found this course helpful. I hope that I have answered a lot of questions that you had in mind. If you have any other questions or issues with this piece, please mention them in comment or contact me for an online lesson. Have fun playing piano and see you next time.